Yay. All right, we're here. We're back. This is another episode of On the Schmooze recorded live. So welcome replay viewers. We're thrilled that you're here. This will be airing in late November as part of the On the Schmooze podcast, but we are broadcasting to LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube. So thrilled to bring this content far and wide. I've got an amazing guest with me today. And without further ado, let me do the formal introduction. Today's guest believes being human is your competitive advantage. He's a renowned business strategist, global keynote speaker, executive trainer, and coach, investor, and Forbes contributor. As president and co-owner of PureMatter, a Silicon Valley global marketing agency, and CEO of H2H Companies, he sparked the Human-to-Human H2H global movement that aims to humanize business through simpler communication, empathy, and celebrate our imperfections. He's a two-time best-selling author of There Is No B2B or B2C, It's Human-to-Human, H2H, and Shareology, How Sharing is Powering the Human Economy. Forbes calls him Zen Master to digital marketers, and his TED Talk, yes, TED Talk, not TEDx, featured a TED First, allowing mobile devices during the event to illustrate his belief that even a small inspirational share holds the power to change the world for the better. Please join me in welcoming Bryan Kramer. Bryan, hi.
Hello. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I'm really looking forward to this.
Well, I am too. As you know, this is a show about building strong networks, and the context is leadership. So tell me, how do you define leadership, and when did you realize you had the skills to lead?
The two totally different questions in my mind, because they're so like far apart in distance from each other. So I would say that first of all, leadership is helping someone else grow. That's what leadership is to me. It's not about yourself; it's about others. So that's what I would say to that. And if you're not growing someone else, you're not a leader. Full stop. So the other thing I would say for me is that it actually wasn't until I think in the last like 5 years, maybe 3, that I actually started discovering my own leadership. I think I was just such a newbie in business, in life. I think we all are, but and I just finally really focused on it, like as like I want to be a better leader. Like this has got to be my focus. And so I think it wasn't until the last 3 years that I really started to discover my own leadership.
All right. So first, I want to dig into the definition. So you make it sound so simple in some ways, and we also know that leadership is like an ever evolving. Like you said, it takes so much of your time and effort. But on the most basic, it's simple. And yet you feel like it's been a while since you've have a lot of life experience that you didn't feel like you had it. Now I want to roll the clock back a little bit. I want to roll us back to what you were like as a kid, because who you are today is built upon all those experiences. So when you're on the playground, were you organizing your friends? Were you watching from afar? Did you run for office? Did teachers see you as having leadership potential? Like, what kind of kid were you?
Yeah. I was a dorky, shy in some respects and not shy in other respects. When it came time for running for office, I ran for office, and, all the way through high school, won sometimes, lost sometimes. And I would be probably considered, a lot of people would consider me an extrovert, even though I'm an ambivert. And I found I would say that I was, really, really pushed by my parents more than anything else to get in and do those things, which I'm grateful for to this day. I would not have done that on my own had it not been for that. I, went through and my dad was, wanted to be there, wanted to be present, but worked a lot. And so he put us into the Scouts, and I went through and got my Eagle Scout. And that was really helpful as well to my leadership of just understanding what happens outside, not just inside. And so, yeah, I was a different kind of kid. I loved being with every group. There was no such thing as a clique to me. I loved being with the jocks, the nerds, the computers. Like, if there was a group I wasn't part of, then I was not trying hard enough to try and see what was happening over here. So that's really who I was.
I really resonate with that last part. I mean, I had friends in junior high and high school and like all the cliques, and would throw birthday parties where I'd invite people that I liked from all the cliques to one party. And I love the idea of mashups of like people
Yeah.
finding common connections when they normally wouldn't even been in the same room, and then discovering things that they could like enjoy about each other. And yeah, I'm wondering what drove that for you. Were none of those places kind of meeting all of your needs, or you just find fascination in all the people? Like, why do you think you didn't just settle into, I mean, they're sort of clear clicks in high school. So what caused that sort of fascination or desire to move about?
That's a tough question because it really was natural for me just to want to do exactly what you just said. I found it really neat to bring people together. And I think a little part of it was that maybe at certain parts I was bullied, and then as I got older and bigger, I became a, not that I was a big wrestler, I was a small one, but I at least could defend myself. And I started to like think, well, everyone should be a part of everything. Like, we shouldn't push anything away from, like, no one should be cast away. And I loved hanging out with cerebral people. And then sometimes I was like, I don't want to hang out with like, now I just want to talk about like sports. And so I was just eclectic, I guess. I don't know the total answer to that, other than, it was a makeup of who I was.
Yeah, I think the word belonging is sort of woven into that, because you felt that the bullying is sort of formative, right? It's an experience that makes you feel like an other, you don't fit in, you don't belong. They're basically, that's what bullying is. Kids telling each other like, you're out, I'm in. But then you got to a point where you were no longer being bullied, you knew how to defend yourself, but you had that empathy
Yeah.
from that earlier experience. And so the divisions that most kids divide themselves by didn't mean as much to you. And so you weren't seeing the difference, you were seeing the sameness. And I could really appreciate that. And to carry that forward, and clearly this is the message you have today around human to human. I like to say, there are walls for a reason. There are people I don't want to breathe their air, they would shoot me on sight, that kind of thing. But there are
Yep.
too many fences. There are too many like low level barriers that we use to divide ourselves, when we mostly have a lot in common, and we could probably share like a meal or agree on a value. But where we're talking about each other as other, when there's not as much other there, and like we're really unnecessarily dividing. And I think like that was sort of a common for you to bring people together. I was curious how you were perceived. Like they thought you were an extrovert because clearly you're outgoing and you speak up, and here you are running for office because you're getting some encouragement from home. You learn later in life the word ambivert, because none of us knew that word back then. But you must have be seen as sort of popular and outgoing by the time you were like floating around all these groups. Did you feel that way as well?
No, not at all. And yes, if you were to talk to some of my friends, I think they would describe me as that. And I didn't see, nor do I have, I don't see the world as popular or unpopular. I just see it as connected in with a real true friend, or you're not connected in. And if that's called popular, then okay, we can use that word. But I think when you go deeper in a relationship and you really get to know someone, and then you do that again and again and again, that's not me being an introvert or an extrovert or an ambivert. That's me just having empathy and wanting to get to know someone. And that, I can still be me and go back and crawl into my hole at the end of the day when my energy is exercised. But I still enjoy connecting with people, and I think that is maybe perceived might be as popular, but I didn't see it that way.
Yeah, you weren't keeping score in the way
No.
that some kids might in that way. And it also sounds like meaningful connection because your energy has to be used in order to go out into the world. So you probably were being a little more I'm an outgoing extrovert. Like I score a pure 7 on the Myers-Briggs for
Oh
extrovert.
wow, yeah.
Um
Yeah.
so I didn't actually it took me a long time to understand the difference between just being out all the time places and being thoughtful about where I engaged. Like, because I had the energy to do lots and lots of things, it took me a while to refine that approach to
Mm.
be more like, this is where I'm going to invest energy as opposed to I'm just always everywhere. You didn't, or you probably had a lesson earlier because your energy would wane quickly. And if
Yeah.
it wasn't like worth your time, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it happened all the time, but a lot of what I know now how to protect myself and my energy. And that had to be a learned behavior because I would take on people's energy so much that it would destroy me.
Mm.
It would, I either to like a dark place or to a light. And then I started to realize that's the separation of the kind of people that I'm hanging out with. And if I hang out with people that are giving me more energy, that creates more abundance or more light or more creativity, then I can start to feel that way all the time. And because I'm so empathic that I had to tap into a different side of me of understanding, like, you can't hang out with that because that's going to hurt you. You have to hang out with and do this. And these are your people. And I stopped hanging out with everyone over time. That's what I learned is like, I can only have like this circle of people that mean something. And then that's what's going to help propel me. And that's what I discovered in college is I found my people. I just learned like, these are the people that are good. And they, yeah, we had fun in college, but at the same time, we also, I think it was a psychological growth for me to understand like this, I didn't, if you asked me what I learned in college, I couldn't even tell you in the books, but I could tell you that I learned how to be a human being in college. And that's what changed me.
Mm. You're making me have a flashback to earlier in life. I would tell people that I must have a sign across my forehead and blinking neon, victims
Victim
stop
stop
here,
here
because
because
people who
people.
really needed a lot of support and were very draining for my energy would
Mm,
like find me. And I didn't know how to say no to them. And it took a long time to see that and go, yeah, those are the takers. It was hard to like learn to shift away. But to, like you said, to find out how to show up and be present in a different way.
yeah.
Now you mentioned going off to college. I'm curious when you were like 12 or 13, did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up? Was there like a clear
Yeah.
path?
Well, aside from being a firefighter when I was super young, my dad's a physician, and my brother is too, and my mom's a teacher, and so I think there was kind of like, are you going to be going into medical? And I was like, no way, never, ever, no, not going to happen. Because my dad would wake up at like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. for a call to go into the hospital. I'm like, that's not me. So you do you. And then when I called them I called them in college because I was starting to look at criminal justice because I thought I wanted to be an FBI agent. And when I called them and I said I took a communications class, and this is it. Like, I'm not. And my mom, I will never forget. My mom said to my dad, "Rich, you owe me $20." Like, they knew that was the path. Like, they're like, "Yeah, of course, that's what you're doing." And so I, did a lot of speeches and a lot of communication, a lot of work in that area. And public relations was my focus, and Japanese ended up being my minor, which has really no story behind it. I just thought it would be neat. Um, and and then from there it just grew. I went into communications, and that became my focus.
I love how you, in some ways, like stumble upon something. I took one sociology class after going in for political science, but knowing I didn't really want to go into politics. And I ended up with a dual degree because I finished poli-sci because I was so close to finishing. And I finished sociology in about, I don't know, a year and a half. I like did all the classes once I discovered it. I like loved learning how people think and move and engage in groups. So, now that you have this communication degree, which by the way, it sounds like of all the degrees you might get in college, like that is a one very applicable to real life. Did you know in what way? Like there's kind of a lot of options. What was PR, like you mentioned? Is that the direction you went when you first left college?
Well, I got a PR degree, and then I don't, but I can't stand PR. I like PR for other people. I don't like doing it myself. And I know, I have the skill set and I have the background. And so I use it and it just shows up in my life, but it's not like I wanted to go work and do PR. That wasn't a thing that I ended up wanting to do. But what I did realize is in college, there was actually what happened is I got an F on my jazz test. And this is ironic, but weird because it ended up shaping my whole life. I got this F. I went back and I'm like, I'm a good student. I was a good student. So I went in and I was like, how does this happen on a Dizzy Gillespie test that I got an F? And it was really well written in my opinion. And so, I showed it to the professor, and there's a guy standing next to me and he got an F too. And he's like, you two are using the same source, and while your papers aren't exactly the same, the structure is the same. And when I went to go look up the source, it was gone. So I need you guys to go back and show me a source that is real, and then I'll reverse your grade. So I went back to my dorm, and I was a freshman, and I went in and I was like, oh crap, yeah, this is down. So I went into the library and I bought books on HTML, and I went back to my dorm room and I reprogrammed and rewrote an entire source that night. I stayed up all night figuring it out and putting it up, and I sent the link to the professor, and he's like, okay, I'll use this as your source. Maybe that's not like the best way to get an A on your paper, but I wasn't going to get an F. Like that wasn't when I did it right originally. So I was like, this has got to change. So then I was like, well, now I can program websites. So this is kind of cool. So I just started like telling some people, and they're like, oh, I'll pay you $100 here and pay you $100 there. And before you knew it, it turned into a business, and I was making more money than I was as a pizza delivery driver, which is another story. And that like shaped my career right out of college, because agencies wanted to hire me to figure out how to integrate interactive and digital into their traditional work, which they hadn't ever done before. The internet was a whole new thing to them. So who knew an F on a paper was going to lead me down this road?
Yeah, not just the F, but also your own ethic around the work you had done and wanting it to be seen, like feeling like you were right and wanting to find a way to make it right. What year did you graduate college? Just trying to
97.
Yeah, so me too. That's so funny. I have such parallel tracks. I was supposed to graduate in 96. I stuck around an extra year to organize a conference, student conference. I had to be a student to be to run the conference, so I stretched out my classes. Yeah.
What kind of conference was it?
It was an the third annual LGBT Northeast College Campus Conference. I haven't said that mouthful in a while. Yeah, so really cool. Okay, so yeah, that was the beginning. I learned HTML in grad school, like the following year, when I was supposed to be studying. It was a beautiful, beautiful computer like room, and fast computers and fast printers, and I spent a lot of time not working on my work and learning HTML. Yeah, that's a funny time. And so that skill set at the time, you were ahead of a lot of people just for having dabbled a little bit. And then sounds like agencies were looking to incorporate some of this new fandangled technology. And you're like, I'll figure it out. And it really sets you up to be an expert early on in something that takes off. Where did you continue to work for yourself? Were you working for companies? Like, how did you build it into a career and not just a side hustle?
Yeah, I got hired right out of college at an agency, and I grew up working for agencies. I grew up like my career, and I still continued to build sites on my own, and then I kind of built a little bit of a network with my friends from high school, the geek circle, if you will. And, they were true programmers. And so we started building applications. We started building some other things just for fun. And then that turned into work. And so I was kind of working for an agency at the time. And they hired me to do what I was talking about, where right out of college, they're like, hey, let's build digital. We want to be a website, not just a creative agency. We want to be more a digital agency too. And I was like, let's do it. So they hired me for 22 grand a year, which was like, I still had to live in my parents' house. And I probably could have, figured out, other things to do for more, but I was just so fascinated with technology and marketing and communications and PR and how, all of it fit together, that I was like, I don't care about the money right now. I just want to learn how to be a part of an agency. And that was that person who I ended up working for then rehired me into my last job before I started my own agency. And he gave me my own P&L, my own digital arm to build inside of this company. And I learned more from that than I did anything else, because I got to they paid me to build a company with their money. And I was like, yeah, I'm in. And so when it was time to start my own agency in 2002, I had felt so prepared for it because of the opportunities that I've been given to work my way up and learn every aspect of all the jobs inside of an agency and really create what it would be like to do it on my own.
20 years ago, doing a digital agency on your own it's like everything was so new, and you had a lot of experience for the time, but really only 5 years experience, right? Like, you graduated and it was 5 years later, here you are running your own agency. But it sounds like you had the right people around you. You were doing a lot of side projects for fun that turned into work. So you were also building a network. What was the most challenging part? You had so much sort of set up for you, but what was the challenge as you shifted from, a paycheck, although a meager one, to it being all on you to build something?
So the way that happened is I met my then girlfriend, now wife, or fiance, in Washington, DC in 2000, 2001. And we at an advertising conference. And she asked me what I did we actually met at the bar. So you could say we met at a bar, but it was at an ad agency conference. And she said, what do you do? And I was like, marketing. We're at a marketing conference. So, I thought, I would go the funny route, and I told her, hey, have you ever seen Seinfeld? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, that's what I do. Nothing. And then she did not find that funny. She turned around and started talking to other people at the bar. And I'm like, I just totally screwed that up. And then she finally came back over and talked to me, and she remembers this differently, but she said she thought that was funny and sat down, and we just talked until 4 in the morning. And that led to us dating 2 years long distance between Michigan and California. And after about 2 years, California won out. She moved here with her then 2-year-old from another marriage, and became my daughter. We married, started the business, and just jumped off a cliff all at the same time, and have just absolutely enjoyed being with each other every day since, with the arguments about life and who's going to pick up the kids and all that kind of stuff. But we just clicked in a business way and a personal way to find balance with each other. And had it not been for both, for all of that, I don't know if the business would have taken off and grown the way it did, because I had her, she had me. And it was just this symbiotic thing that we grew from day one.
It's amazing hearing stories of people who've worked together and are like romantic partners for 20 years. That's
Yeah.
I think it's a dream for some people listening and a nightmare for others. Maybe a lived nightmare. I don't know. It sounds like really amazing and hard. But it's also that you had someone to balance out what you were able to do. She had a passion for the same work. I could see having that steady partnership is a great way to kick things off and to grow. When you were first getting started, who were the clients you were aiming for? Like, how did you figure that out?
Local and small. So we had construction company, accounting firm. When I say small, like 10 to $50 million companies that were that needed branding and digital and creative. And we were the thing that really made us different. A was the creative, and that's my wife. And B, it's that we put process and structure in right away. I think that's what made us a 20-year-old company, because if we didn't have process and structure in a creative agency, it's like the ultimate way to die fast, because people just hate having to guess. Like, it's, when you're in a creative space and you don't have a step-by-step process, and that's not saying that we need to be inside the box for creativity, but just absolutely knowing where everyone fits and where they belong and where they can see themselves, that made the difference for the duration, and started to really resonate with our smaller clients and grow our agency into much bigger clients.
It's really interesting because in a lot of ways, it was because you were focusing on the human experience of being a client in that space, instead of waiting to get back to people or having them chase you down or not know where things are. Like, you were designing something that would help them feel part of it, even when you were like doing your design and we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
It's like keeping them in the loop. And I have worked with creatives who are good at that, and I've worked with probably more creatives who you're like, where are we on this? And like, I feel out of the loop and it makes me feel a little anxious. So I can imagine that is, again, like going to where you are today with Human-to-Human, like the fact that you were creating a good process, a good journey, or good experience for the humans that you were interacting with, both on your team as well as the clients that you were working with. It doesn't surprise me, but it also distinguishes you. It is a really good, like a differentiator for a creative agency to have. And so that it lets you sort of build up. I also love that you call these small businesses. The word small business is what an odd category. It's like small businesses, $50 million. And I'm like, I get it. And also, wow. But you started to grow. And how did you then decide to market yourself? Like, did that shift and grow as you sort of matured as an organization?
Yeah. Absolutely. We turned into, because I think agencies have to, they have to adapt and they have to change every 2 to 3 years, because marketing changes. It's a radical shift now. I can say that looking back, with new technology or new ways. And, we're here in San Jose. And so when I say small business here is, comparable to, Intel and Intuit and, Facebook and LinkedIn and all the companies that we have here. And so not now, and back then it was, what gave us our competitive growth, I think, was the fact that we could grow into demand generation at a time when it was, I guess you call it account-based marketing now. But we grew into a demand gen place where companies came in and they loved the creativity that was applied to serving personalized information to people. And I loved it because that's who I am. Like, if you can't deliver something in a personalized way to another human, then you're just a sea of same. And so for us to be able to do that, and we started talking about Human-to-Human and how that was a part of our process. And that shifted us into, 5 companies, I think, that ended up being swallowed by IBM, which then brought us into IBM. And that's what sent us up in the, Cisco and IBM and Netflix and MasterCard and all these other huge companies. And at the same time, while that growth sounds neat, I loved it at the time. Looking back, I really miss the accounting firms, the construction firms, and everything that I worked with was a little bit more interesting to me because you got to actually work with the decision makers and make a big difference. Where when you work with these large companies, you're working for a 0.01% change in something, and it doesn't have the gravitas that it did back when we were smaller, when we were 10 people working really hard and being creative and having fun and being gritty.
Yeah, it's hard to go back to that space when people like they think that success is to always go for the bigger and the bigger, but your impact doesn't feel as big now that you're working in a larger, I mean, it's just a larger arena. So the ripple isn't going to be as deeply felt, and you're not talking to direct decision makers. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, every now and again, I'm sure you can have a breakaway campaign that, you know, is changes things.
Yeah.
How has I mean, so much has changed 20 years, like how we communicate, the tools, the mediums. I mean, so much has changed. How do you keep like on the edge of that? How do you stay in the forefront of what even falls into the word communication these days? How do you make sure that stays fresh?
Yeah. Well, one and the first thing is, remember, I'm a geek at heart, and so I think I tinker. I have more tools and things that I try. It's almost annoying on that level to my wife because she's like, "What? Like, how many subscriptions do we have, and do we really need?" And I'm like, I love it because then it puts me in touch with what's possible. I may not use it, but at least I know it's possible. And then in other respects, I think that, you know, when the right creative situation comes along, you know what's possible and you can apply it. So that's how I kind of stay up to date. Is I have too many subscriptions to too many things, and then have to constantly go back in and, you know, once every 6 months start like canceling subscriptions because it is too much. I love Flipboard. It's my favorite tool for staying in touch with what's happening off the news channels and in certain real like really specific niches. And I can tune Flipboard into what is coming and what I like and how I want to see the world. Not that I want to see it in like black and white, but just I want to see it differently than how Time Magazine and Fast Company and Inc. and all these other companies are showing me information. I want to tune it the way that I want to see it. And that helps me to be like a little bit more futuristic, I guess. So that's the second thing. I'm addicted to that. And then I would say the third thing is conversations with other people like this. Just even like a 20 or 30-minute conversation to me with just asking questions and being like, what's new for you and what's possible and how could we do this together or not, but maybe at some point we can. I mean, I had 3 conversations yesterday that left me with 3 more things that I wanted to research because I was like, that's so cool that you can do that. I had no idea. And that's better than Flipboard and everything else that I use, because now I can go back to them as a resource and be like, hey, let's actually talk about that.
I love your sort of commitment to learning and growth. And I do believe that innovation often comes from the edges of our network, from ideas that seem sort of disparate, and you know, at a glance you can't figure out why you would bother to know about that, but then you're like, oh, man, grab that and bring it over here. I love taking ideas that way. It is a little bit like mashing up people. So when you can take ideas and just be like, oh, let's see if it applies here. Well, it didn't really work. We learned from this. But you know, the idea of wanting to stay in the mix.
Yep.
I think some people are really successful and then they become a person with a hammer, essentially, right? Like they're really good with a hammer. And so they're like, I've got a hammer now. And maybe they get bigger hammers. That's cool. They like build a bigger hammer, but like kind of in the essence, they are good with a hammer. And they don't want to investigate everything else that's out there. All the other tools in the toolbox, doesn't matter. I've got a hammer. And so they go looking for things to nail. And you're like, I'm building a really complex toolbox because I never know what I'm going to need. And so it's a really innovative model, And I think it says something about you personally, that is how you're keeping an agency fresh for 20 years.
Mm.
Who's the ideal client right now? Like if I'm talking to someone, what are they saying to me that makes me think, oh my gosh, I need to introduce you to Bryan?
Oh, well, so first and foremost, I should probably say that our agency is no longer an agency. I actually had a massive burnout, and it was so big that because I was speaking I was traveling over 200 days a year, and my son came up to me. He was 11 at the time, no, 12 at the time, and he grabbed my hand and he pulled me into his bedroom and said, "Dad, I want to talk to you. Sit down." And it was one of the days I was home, and he said, "Dad, you are overweight. You have diabetes," which I did. I just got, my doctor just told me, and you're never at our school plays or school functions, anything, and you're never going to meet your grandchildren at this rate. And I was so blown away. He's right. I ate my way through every country because the food was so good, but at the same time, I had to take a step back. And so I talked to Courtney and I said, I want to exit everything. I want to stop speaking. I want to stop the agency. I need to. I've had it. And so we did. It took us 6 months, and we exited. And then I took a year off, and I became after that, she started to become a CMO for the coaches, Coactive Coaches Training Institute. And I went through their program, and just because I found it fascinating, and I became an executive coach. And it just, we still run a marketing consultancy, and we help companies with their creative strategy and with their with CMO type work, outsourced CMO type work. And then the other part of what we do is executive coaching. And I absolutely, I love helping companies and people to grow without burnout, which is what I did. And I took the year off. I lost 85 pounds. I lost diabetes. I never missed a school function or a school play again. I picked my kids up from school, and dropped them off every day from that day forward. And I don't regret a thing, but, that's my journey.
Wow. Your 12-year-old at that time was wise beyond their years and brave to come to you and tell you what they were seeing as the truth of the situation, that probably a lot of people were trying to either not see or didn't want to bring up. And, it's like hard to live with that. And you took action. So I'm a family guy myself. I have a 4.5 and 6.5-year-old. And I think a lot of how I now think about success is really defined by that, because I don't want to be 200 days on the road. Like, that's not a goal of mine. I love that I'm now in this space where I do so much on Zoom because I'm able to have the impact without having to take so much time away. And I'm selective about the time I'm away. So kudos to you for turning your life around, for listening, and to them for bringing all of that up. And so you found a new way of helping. I feel like you're a learner, but you also love to support and engage with people. And so now you're able to do that as an executive coach. And so you're still in business together, you're just doing this slightly different work?
Yeah, we still run the creative. We run it as a creative consultancy rather, and we just outsource. And so there's just the two of us instead of 30 of us. And we now are, you might say, fractional CMOs or creative directors for companies. And most of the companies we work with are purpose driven. It just fills our soul to I still don't know what the tech companies that we work for actually do. So that's, I need to understand what they do, and I want to believe in them, and I want to, help create a future for something that's like visionary, that's going to make you go, yes, let's go do that. And so that's the companies that we work with is, it means something in the world. And so creative director, outsourced CMO, and then executive. I work with business CEOs that want to grow and go on vacation and not burn out. Like they're like, how do I grow this thing, but without all the headache and the the missing out on my family and all that stuff. It's totally doable. And as you do so well, because I've like researched you to the nth degree, and how you balance your life, if you want to call it balance or whatever. You have created a life that's so, which is why I couldn't wait to meet you, because you have done that thing that everyone wants. They want to do joy-filled work and have a home life. And that's where I think most people want.
Yeah, I think that you're building on, again, your own personal experience. When you were a kid, you were bullied. That created a feeling of empathy, which is what made you want to bring people together. When you hit burnout, you again, like using that experience, wanted to make a difference in the world, try to help other people not experience that burnout. And it's just a lot. I mean, it's fun to hear this conversation and see how you have always been you. Different environments and different sort of possibilities that were in front of you, but you're kind of constantly growing. I'm thrilled that you and I connected for the same reasons. For my virtual event design side of my business, I work with mission-driven or purpose-driven organizations to help them bring their events online with less stress and greater participant engagement. And that is because I'm sitting in the room. I'm literally a fly on the wall of some amazing conversations for these conferences and these trainings, and get to witness that and make what they do work really well in this new medium that we're all suddenly like using nonstop. And then I get to also work, doing one-on-one and group work with entrepreneurs who, again, are trying to do this big impact in the world. I want to shift us just to the last couple of questions. And one is, you have just developed an amazing network in the last 20 plus years. It seems like you're such a human-to-human people person, right? How do you nurture, sustain, not just like the inner circle of those people that you always know you'll stay in touch with or catch up with easily, but that second and third tier or second and third layers out, like any habits, philosophies, or practices for keeping in touch and staying top of mind?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't think I think our brains have a capacity of like a filing cabinet. And once it becomes too full, then we become stuck and we don't know what to do with relationships or anything else in business. And so I'm a proponent of taking and using technology to be that second brain. And so that we don't have to do that. And so I use Evernote and a CRM tool, and I capture everything into a really systematic, really structured way to be able to make sure that I'm not forgetting. Because we all meet people and then we go, oh yeah, I'll reach back out to that person, or oh, yeah, I would love to get to know them. And then you don't. And it just stops there. And I think that it doesn't have to. You can put in a way to stay in touch and to be present in each other's lives without talking every day, but knowing like, okay, hey, it's 6 months has gone by and I'd just love to touch base and see how you're doing. And so that's my biggest tip, is put something simple where you can capture everything and not forget, so that you can go turn off your brain and focus on other things. And then it pops up. And every day I just do this now naturally. I think I just reach out to someone and say, hey, and it's not like, hey, can I help you, or can you help me? Or it's just, how are you? Like, what's going on? And then that, even just in like, it sparks a psychology of for both of us, not just you, but for me to be present in two people's lives where they feel like acknowledged. And it really, I think it triggers a lot of, I don't know, it triggers a lot in me. It's like, I can almost it like jumps me up. And after I've reached out to someone and we've talked, now all of a sudden I can sit back and go, oh my God, that was awesome. I'm going to move forward with my day now. So, just that little touch point once a day with one new person or one existing person, 365 days, that's 365 people.
Yeah, it's a really simple challenge that you've just given to all the people listening, that, it's creating a habit. Not just think about wanting to do more of that, but to actually create some process. Now, you said you're using a CRM. Is the CRM where you're getting these names each day? Is that what's triggering it, or are you using the CRM for something else?
Yeah, I use the CRM and my own I'm ADHD. So also I like a name will just pop in my head and I don't wait. I just text them right away, like, or message right away. Like if I don't do it, then I'll never do it. So if somebody pops in, I'm just like, hey, friend from college, Andy, how are you? How's your mom doing? Right away I'll do it. And then CRM is the other way of how I track all of the conversations. I use Nimble, and it just completely captures everything I need. And I know birthdays and I know everything in there about like what we last talked about and what I sent to someone and how, if I didn't hear back from them and I just want to make sure they got it, like all of that is in there.
How long did it take you to really get that set up? Because it sounds like a great resource, a great system, and also I can tell why people hesitate to really invest the time to get it set up.
I just walked a client through it this morning in 20 minutes. It's not hard to set up. It's really easy. It's just a matter of looking at it and going, okay, how am I going to make this tool with less friction? Because if we look at a tool and go, oh, I got to use that every day, then that you're never going to use it. But if it's just if it works with you, not you working with it, so that you can capture the information like wherever you're at, and that's it. It just does its job. Then it'll be easier for you to use.
Brilliant. We'll put a link to Nimble in the show notes so people can check it out. So here's my final question. It's one of my favorite. I know we're going to stay in touch, Bryan, for a zillion reasons, and probably have to have many follow-up conversations. Let's say it's a year from now, and I suddenly realize it's been a year, and I reach out and I say, "Oh my gosh, Bryan, it's been a year." I'm going to want to ask you, "Hey, what's up? What are you celebrating these days?" So, what are you most looking forward to in the year ahead?
My book. I just started writing a book right now, my third book, so a year from now, I will celebrate the launch of that book. And so it's the sequel to H2H, which I wrote in 2014, and then Shareology. And now I'm writing a sequel to H2H because I think that it matters now more than when I actually originally wrote it. Everything's changed, and I'm going to focus on trust as the epicenter for what builds human relationships. So the whole book will be focused on that. And I just finished the outline. So I'm at the very beginning stages of it.
Well, I can't wait to celebrate that with you. How can people find you and follow your work?
At bryankramer.com, Bryan with a Y, Kramer with a K. And you can sign up for my newsletter, and my information and all my socials and everything is there, or at Bryan Kramer anywhere.
Brilliant. We'll put all those links in the show notes at ontheschmooze.com. Bryan, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. These are, it's kind of a trip down memory lane. I don't do that quite often. So that was really neat. Thank you.
My pleasure.